Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dropping the Gloves. It's been a while. Gosh, these 2 weeks seem like the weekends go forever, Tim. We don't get to talk. We don't get to do a show, but then Tuesday comes around. It's like, when's the last time we did an episode? Doesn't it feel that way for you?
It does feel that way. Yeah, I was working on the agenda this morning, and I'm like, is that the last episode we did? It feels like 2 weeks ago, and it's only 5 days or whatever. But yeah, it's good to catch up and see you again.
Yeah, it's been good. Busy here in Michigan, very warm. We're moved into the house, dealing with problems left, right, and center, but it's good. I heard it's warm in Carolina. What is it, 90 already at 10 a.m.? Crazy.
90 already. Yeah, it was hot yesterday. It's going to be even hotter today. It's going to feel like 105, whatever that real feel thing. It's brutal, but I don't have to go outside too much today, luckily. Tough on the dogs. The dogs can't walk when it's that hot.
No, poor Levi. He's got a very tough life. I feel very bad for him. You know who else has a tough life? Pat Verbeek, GM of the Anaheim Ducks. So he's been trying to revamp this lineup for years now. I think he's been GM for the Anaheim Ducks for 3-4 years now. And he's had some difficult decisions. He obviously traded Drysdale. He's had some young players that are not happy in the organization. He's playing hardball with these guys. Well, another shoe has fallen for Pat Verbeek. First round pick, Trevor Zegras, the infamous Michigan goal. Tons of talent, just incredible amounts oozing out of him. Work ethic, questionable. Commitment to the game, questionable. Lots of unknowns with Trevor Zegras, and not really a player you would think that fit the Pat Verbeek type mold. When Pat Verbeek played, he was a hard-nosed, checking forward who had a great amount of skill, but also a great work ethic and did all the things that you want a player to do, all the intangibles. He back-checked. He forechecked. He finished his checks. He didn't take a shift off. Those sorts of things that Trevor Zegras, Tim, when you think of him, those things aren't oozing off of Trevor Zegras. When you think of him, you think of long hair. You think of fancy plays. You think of offense all the time, defense maybe sometimes. Finishing a check, never. So the marriage wasn't going to last. And sure enough, he was traded. Trevor Zegras has been traded to the Philadelphia Flyers. What's the return, you ask, for a former 9th overall pick who has shown signs of greatness? His goal-scoring ability, he's gotten 23. Last year, dipped a little bit. Only scored 12 goals in 57 games. Maybe limited ice time, but does have that potential. Not a very good return in my eyes. Goes to Philadelphia for a second rounder, a fourth rounder, and a young kind of third, fourth line guy in Ryan Poehling. Shocked by the trade? Caught off guard, Tim? What was your first initial reaction to this trade?
No, not caught off guard. I think that was the buzz for a couple of days leading up to that trade, was that Zegras is heading out of town. I was shocked by the return, though. It did seem like a guy like him would get a lot more, you're buying the upside. You're buying the potential. For a guy that has already had, if I'm correct, multiple 60-point seasons on a bad team as a undersized, skinny, talented young teenager, basically. So, yeah, you kind of think that he could be great in today's game. And he kind of, to me, represents that next generation of players, for better or worse. I know a lot of old-timers and the blue-collar guys look at him as sort of, I don't want to say dainty, but light on his feet, high skill, but not really equipped to play the man's game. But he's so talented. He's so smart in terms of hockey IQ. He can develop plays, but he hasn't transitioned that to the NHL yet. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the league isn't totally headed in that direction yet. And the fact that he's not putting up a point per game or better kind of shows that it's still a man's game. It's still a physical game. His talent alone isn't enough to succeed in the NHL, and he's a great representation of that. But I did think that you'd get a better return for that. And I was reading more about this yesterday when the trade went down. It seemed like the Ducks didn't even really shop him very hard. In fact, Frank Saravalli reported, and I read this in a couple other places too, that some GMs were disappointed that they didn't have a chance to make a better offer than what the Flyers gave him. I think if they knew that the trade was that far along, they might have given him a second and a fourth and a young player instead of a third. You know what I mean? I'm surprised that he didn't, get shopped around a bit more.
Yeah, me too. And that maybe falls on Pat Verbeek's plate. Maybe it falls on Breeson's plate, Zegras' agent. But a lot of times when these deals go down, And I've been around deals that have happened where the GM will go, this is the deal, take it now because it won't last forever. So if you're Danny Briere, you go to Pat Verbeek, you say, listen, I can do a second and a fourth and polling. This isn't lasting forever. So I need an answer by the end of the day. So if you're Pat Verbeek, you need to do your due diligence. Like Trevor Zegras is a pretty big asset to have because he has shown signs of greatness. It's a pretty loaded word. He has shown signs of being a really good hockey player, like you mentioned, playing with not so great talent in 2021, 22, 22, 23. Put up 61, 65 points. Obviously, the last 2 years he's been dealing with injuries, inconsistent play, inconsistent ice time, but he does have that potential. And we've seen, Tim, in the NHL, potential usually gets you a high return. It usually gets you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chances. And this kid does have that high ceiling, which GMs love. Oh, you know what? We can get him. We can pair him with this player. We can milk more out of this guy. Oh, Anaheim didn't know what they were doing. So for Pat Verbeek to not put the line out there to every single GM, that's strange to me. I don't understand that. And maybe Frank Saravalli's not really reliable sometimes, but this seems like some GMs were a little caught off guard, like you said, and that's kind of, is it par for the course for Pat Verbeek? Maybe, because here's a guy coming in to be a GM. He doesn't really know. It's not an old boys club hire. He's a former player. Maybe he doesn't know all the GMs. Maybe he just talks to his buddy. I damn well know he knows Danny Briere. So when you're shopping Trevor Zegras, you ask your buddies first, hey, do you want this guy? I don't want him on my team. He's a problem. Doesn't really play the way I like to play. Well, what do you give me for him? And then next thing you know, you're sitting there in Minnesota and you're Billy Guerin. You go, what the hell? I would have loved to have Trevor Zegras. I would love to have this guy play alongside, Kirill Kaprizov. That'd be a great first-line matchup for my team. So, I don't know. Maybe he could have got a first and a second and a third, and a good prospect. But as it stands right now, I feel like Pat Verbeek dropped the ball on this one. Just like, I don't want to say he dropped the ball on the Cutter Gauthier trade, but early signs are Jamie Drysdale is doing pretty good, and Cutter Gauthier not really working out so good. But 0 for 2 so far for Pat Verbeek in my eyes when you have these two young prospects and you're not getting much return for him, Tim.
Yeah, and I wonder, too, if Coach Q had anything to do with this. He was just hired a couple of weeks back. He is certainly an old-school coach. He has been around the league a long time. He has a certain – he's a player's coach, I know, but he's got a certain style that he likes. And you think back to the Blackhawks days, he certainly loved, obviously, Kane and Toews and Hossa and Sharp and all those guys. But you also kind of get the sense that his favorite players were those – Bickles and Bolins and even Scotts of the world that played that blue collar style, and maybe Zegras didn't fit into that. So I wonder if he had anything to do with that move and maybe the urgency of it, because there's certainly a lot of teams that would have loved to pick up a top 6 young center, skilled forward that can play center or the wing, who's entering a contract year that's maybe motivated to prove some doubters wrong.
Well, again, you have to think about. To answer your first question, I think Q would love to coach a player as talented as Zegras. So I don't think he had any input on this, because when you look at your roster, you go, would I rather have Ryan Poehling or Trevor Zegras? Like it just diminishes the talent on your team, which makes you think, well, okay, let's look past this trade. Let's look to the future. Anaheim Ducks trying to load up, trying to get better. They've been terrible for the last few years. What do we need to do to maybe bring in some high-end guys? We need to clear cap space. Now they almost have $40 million in cap space. They got some money to spend. Trevor Zegras gone. He carried 5.75. So you're going big fish hunting right now. You bring in Chris Carter and his contract. He's a veteran who can score goals. You need to bring in some players who can be facilitators. Troy Terry is a goal scorer. You have some decent young players. Maybe they're making a play for Mitch Marner. Maybe they're making a play for some other fish out there to use that money on. So that's where I'm hoping Pat Verbeek's going. But boy, if I'm a UFA and I'm looking at this roster now, do I want to like Trevor Zegras is a fun guy you would think you would want to play with. If I'm a Mitch Marner and I look at that roster, I go, oh, he's 24 years old. The kid's fun. It would be nice to play with him. He seems like a good guy in the locker room. Definitely a good guy outside of the locker room, Maybe he doesn't have the great work ethic, but that's a guy I would want to play with versus, no offense to Ryan Poehling, but like I'm not banging down your door to play with you. Whereas a Trevor Zegras, with all the baggage, I'm like, that'd be great. And I know Cutter Gauthier and Leo Carlson and all these young, exciting players, your Robbie Fabry. It's maybe not Robbie Fabry, but it's not as enticing if Trevor Zegras was there. So I think if I'm going to grade this trade for the Philadelphia Flyers, like this is an A. You see a team that wants to move a player and you offer them nothing. A second and a fourth is nothing. So basically, it's Trevor Zegras for Ryan Poehling, a third or fourth line guy for a potentially first line player, and you have him under team control because he's an RFA after this season. So it's a low risk, very, very high reward for the Philadelphia Flyers. And for the Anaheim Ducks, like, what the hell we get here? We get a second and a fourth and a third or fourth line guy? It's a huge miss for us. And I know he carried a cap and he's got all this baggage, but still, talent is what we're looking for. An NHL talent. And that's what he was and that's what he is. And you just gave him away for nothing. It's so bizarre that he made this trade in my eyes.
So I'm looking at the Ducks roster right now, and we're going to talk a lot about some of the trade rumors and free agency signings and reports and all that stuff. But one of the ones is John Gibson, who reportedly is willing to waive his no movement clause to go to Edmonton. And I'm looking at the roster right now. I had no idea he was only 31. Doesn't it feel like he's been around forever? I would have guessed 34, maybe 35, where you're kind of like, you're hoping for 1 or 2 good years if he can stay healthy. But he could be a good goalie if he's healthy on a good team for 5 more years. So that kind of surprised me, just thinking out loud while I'm looking at that.
Well, and another thing there is Lucas Dahlstall. He kind of took the majority of the net last year at the end of the season. So John Gibson wasn't really the number one starter. It would not surprise me if they moved John Gibson. And Tim, this has been the case for the last, 2 years with Gibson? Oh, we're going to trade him. We're rebuilding. Let's give John Gibson a chance to, go to a contender. He's going to the Leafs. He has to go. He has to go this season. Like you said, he's 31. He carries a pretty substantial cap hit at 6.4, but he needs to move. I think you have to, A, give him a chance to win, and B, the value is not going to be higher. The free agent market for goaltenders is nothing. There are no good goaltenders on the market. I think the best goaltender who's a UFA is Jake Allen, who's 34 years old. So that's as good as it gets. So if you can parlay John Gibson into some picks back when he's not even your starter, you need to do that. And there are some teams that desperately need goaltending, Tim. The Toronto Maple Leafs, I guess Stolarz, if he's healthy. The Edmonton Oilers, 100%. The Buffalo Sabres need goaltending. There are some teams that need some help between the pipes. Columbus Blue Jackets. Elvis Merzlikins has not been that consistent guy. So the need is there for a lot of teams, and John Gibson, his value will not be higher. So Pat Verbeek still has some work to do. It's going to be an interesting offseason for this team. They got some draft picks. They got some good young players, but they also have some bad contracts that they've taken on. Jacob Trouba, Chris Kreider. So I don't know where this team is headed. I really don't know the direction Pat Verbeek is sending them, but gosh, they have some options, which is pretty neat for this team. So 0 for 2 so far. Well, I would say 0 for 3 with the Kreider trade, 0 for 4 with the Trouba trade. So Pat Verbeek, we had such promise with him, didn't we? He had a lot of good young players. He had a ton of money to spend. Then he brings in Kreider. He brings in Killorn. He brings in Trouba. He brings in Gudas. Is this the Yzer plan 2.0? Or are we just bringing in these old veterans to just scuttle this team and ruining the development of all these good young players of like Mason McTavish, Leo Carlson, Cutter Gauthier, like I mentioned? I don't understand. I don't get it.
I mean, I don't know that bringing in like experienced, likable, talented veterans ruins anyone's development. I think if anything, it helps it. Well, maybe the argument that they're taking away ice time, but Chris Kreider still got some game in him. Alex Killorn still got some game in him. You know what I mean? Like, nothing wrong with getting tougher. When you already had Gudas, now you add Trouba to that, both on expiring contracts. They won't be back next year. So I don't know. It's okay. I'm really excited about Jackson Lacombe. We talked about him, a couple months back. He's a stud. I don't know. We'll see. The team has a lot of money to spend, and they're still a few years away from contending, but they've got some pieces that you can build around.
I disagree. I think they're garbage, and they've made their team worse this offseason, so we'll see. And again, if I'm Mitch Marner, because I think that's the end game. All these teams are maneuvering and moving money with the intention of going after Mitch Marner. He wants to go out west, supposedly, and there's only a few teams out west. If I'm him and I look at this roster, I go, okay, who am I going to be playing with for 8 years? Why does this team make me happy? I look at Vegas, I look at Dallas, I look at LA, I go, there's some pretty good players there. Not potential, because I know Anaheim has a lot of good young players with potential. There are NHL-ready players there that I can step in and win in the next 2 or 3 years. Anaheim is 4 years out, Tim. At least 4 years out for being a Stanley Cup title contender. So, I don't know. All right, moving on. We're talking about my buddy, Johnny Toews. Out of the league for 3 years now. Obviously got long COVID with Chicago, went through some other issues that we're not going to get into because no one really knows. Johnny Toews keeps his stuff close to the vest, right? There's not a lot out there. Went to India, did a little spiritual healing, seems to have his life in order. I talked to him earlier this year. I was like, come on the show, Johnny. Come on the show. He's like, I will, but I want to make sure I have a team locked in first. And I was like, fine, so be it. I texted him yesterday. He said, all right, let's work it out. Going to be on the show, hopefully. He could ghost me. Johnny's, like that. But he signed a 1-year deal. Colorado Avalanche were in the mix. He had a short list, according to his agent. Everybody knew, Tim, where he was going. Hometown boy. Going back to Winnipeg. He's living there now. It just makes sense. He's 37 years old, signs a 1-year deal with the Winnipeg Jets, going back to a team that was arguably the best team in the NHL this season. Best goalie in the league. Hart Trophy. Vezina Trophy. Loaded offense. Defense maybe could use some work. Depth maybe needs some help a little bit down the middle. Johnny Toews gives them that. He has all the intangibles you want. Captain serious. He's won at every single level he's been at, Tim. What are your expectations for Jonathan Toews, Tim? Come on, give it to me.
Yeah, this is funny. We were talking about this on the Slack channel when the trade went through a couple days ago. Or the signing, I mean. Not super high expectations. He hasn't played in a little while. He's up there in age. I think, if the bright side of this is that he hasn't had a lot of wear and tear on his body the last few years at a hockey level. He's had other things that are, that he's gone through physically. But the leadership is there. The hockey IQ is there. I think some of the playmaking ability is still going to be there. So I think if you expect a third line center who's going to put up 10, 12 goals, 35 points, something like that, he can be on the second power play. He'll be useful in the playoffs if and when they get there, but don't expect too much and he'll surprise you. Because if you're thinking he can come and be 50-plus points, 20-plus goals, I just don't see that. But I don't know. I could be wrong. What do you think?
No, I agree. His last 2 full seasons with the Hawks, he was a 30-point guy. 10 to 15 goals, 20 assists like you mentioned. And that's when he was healthy and 4 years younger. Yeah. So he's 37 years old now. He hasn't played elite hockey since 2023. It's been a long time. So I think if he gets 35 points, that's great for him. But I think you sign him for the playoffs. Like that's the reason why you bring Jonathan Toews into this organization. You need someone to be that guy. You don't have it. Adam Lowry was not that guy. Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, all these guys are great talents, but you don't have that guy. And it's just you either have it or you don't. And I think you bring Jonathan Toews in, and he will be the guy to kind of calm the ship when times get hard. He'll be the guy who rallies the troops. He does it. I've seen there. I've been in the room with him when he does it. It's incredible. So that's why he has so many bonuses attached to his contract. He signed a 1-year, $2 million deal. It jumps to $5 million. If they get to the playoffs, the second round, the third round, win the Stanley Cup, he gets, certain points, bonuses, but it's mostly tied to the success of the team. Because he knows where his value lies. And this is a great signing for him. I think it works out perfectly for player and team. The Winnipeg Jets, obviously uber talented. He slots in nicely. I think he's going to be a third-line centerman. I think people want him to be the second-line centerman and play with Perfetti or Ehlers if they bring him back. I think he slides in with Nito Niederreiter and Alex Iafallo on the third line, and you bump Nemestikov up to the second-line center. I think that's a good spot for him. He gets limited ice time. He plays to kill, maybe like you said, second-line power play. Give him 14 minutes a game. That's where he lives. He's like a Corey Perry, but better. He's better than Corey Perry. I'm excited to see what he does. He's been gone for so long. I think people forget how good he can be, not just defensively. I think he's got some offensive game left in him.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, obviously, is he's one of the better, captains, young leaders that the league has seen in a long time, going back to, being a teenager, getting to see with the Blackhawks. And wasn't there a story, you told us once, it's been a while, where, like, when you were with the Hawks and you weren't dressing for a few games in a row and he pulled you aside and kind of pumped you up a little bit? What was that?
Yeah, no, I was being a baby, breaking my stick, broke the sauna door, and he comes up and he's like, "Stay with us, we need you." Like, yeah, he just has that feel for a team. But there was also times when he would like suck it up, like you're being a bitch. Let's go. Like we don't need this here. Like you're just a pleb. I'm like know your role, and he has the ability to kind of toe that line.
You need
And
both.
now he's 37
Yeah.
years old, and he has 3 Stanley Cups under his belt. He has multiple gold medals under his belt. He has life experience under his belt. So he's going to go into this locker room, and I think he immediately commands it. Like he will be the captain of this team, even if he doesn't have a C on his chest. I think they'll give him an A. He deserves it. I'm sure he's been around the team the last couple of years because he lives in Winnipeg. So this is a great signing. I think he obviously has familiarity with GM Kevin Cheveldayoff. He was with him in Chicago for their Stanley Cup championship. So they're buddies. They know each other, and Chevy knows the type of player he's getting. So great signing. Great signing for the Winnipeg Jets. Any team would have been lucky to have Jonathan Toews, even with his lack of playing. I think this will be a win-win for both team and player. I fully expect. Boy, are we gonna give him the cup already? Get the ring and parade ready. But it's a good early sign for the Winnipeg Jets. They have a lot of work to do. This team still has a lot of money to spend. They have a lot of free agents that need to be wrapped up. Kyle Connor is going to want a massive deal. He makes $7 million. He's going to be UFA next year. What do you do with this guy? He consistently gets 40 goals a year. He's going to want 11, $12 million. Nicholas Ehlers, do we bring him back? He's a UFA. He's only 29 years old. He's another guy like John Gibson, where it's like, isn't he 38? He's been in the league forever. Why is he only 29? He needs a big deal. He consistently gets 25 goals a season. He consistently gets 60 points a season. He's going to want $7 million. So the Winnipeg Jets, you check this box, get some veteran third line center. Now you need to go out and revamp the defense a little bit. You need to bring in some talent to play with Scheifele, Connor, these types of players. So if I'm Chevy, I need to start making moves. I need to start bringing guys in. I need to start signing guys. So it's going to be a big, big offseason for the Winnipeg Jets after just an epic collapse in the playoffs again for this team. I think this is the last hurrah for Kevin Cheveldayoff. If he doesn't do it this season, he needs to be gone. He needs to be fired. All right. Anything else on this signing, Tim?
No, let's move on to some of the trade rumors, the free agency noise. There's lots going on. Today is Tuesday. We have the draft on Friday. We have a draft on Friday, free agency on Monday. So there's a lot of rumors happening. There's a lot of buzz, and I think it's a good combination because there's not a very strong free agency class, which means teams are going to be looking to get better a lot through trades, and that just makes it more exciting for the hockey fans that are following along. So let's start with one of the bigger names on the market right now. That's Marco Rossi from the Minnesota Wild. He's not a tiny forward, but he's undersized, 5'9". And the Wild reportedly, according to Elliot Friedman, offered him a bridge deal, which was rejected by Rossi. Apparently, he's upset about being on the fourth line in the playoffs. He wants to make sure he's in a place where he can be a top line center. This is a kid. He's 23 years old, I think, 24. He's had an okay career so far. He had 60 points last year, which is good. I think, building off of 40 the year before. So you want to kind of see that development continue. And a lot of times the smaller guys takes a little bit longer to build their game and adjust while they're still growing into their bodies. So I think he's a good investment, but I don't know. Are you partly annoyed with him for complaining about his ice time when he's not really delivering in the playoffs?
Well, it's a tricky situation because he played first line minutes like all season long for the most part. So he was centering Kaprizov and Zuccarello or Boldy, whoever they threw alongside them. So that was their line. But, Eriksson Ek was floating around. Ryan Hartman always bounced around that line up. So it's an interesting team because they don't have depth down the center at all. There's not much talent there. We've been screaming from the rooftops for years. Can we please get a centerman for Kirill Kaprizov? Can we get someone who can play with them? Skate with this guy. And Marco Rossi is a great player. Drafted in the first round, it has that potential. But is he a 1C? Is he that guy who can be a game changer? I don't think so. But he has this opportunity where on this team, he is a 1C. And he sees the depth that they have. And he goes, I'm better than Eriksson Ek. I'm better than Hartman and Gaudreau. Like, are you crazy? Like, I should be playing first line minutes, and all of a sudden you get to the playoffs, and maybe he's turning the puck over a little bit too much, not playing the way the coach wants him to play, and he gets bumped down to the fourth line, so he's a little salty, but he knows he's the best centerman on this team, so maybe he has a little bit of leverage that way. Yeah, I don't know. I think you need to know your role and know your place in the league. Where, listen, buddy, you've been in the league. Let's be honest, 2 years. You came up your first year, you played 2 games. The second year, you played 19. You've been in the league 2 years. 60 years last year. I wonder how many of those 60 points are directly related to Kirill Kaprizov.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just if we're being realistic, I think Hartman could have gotten those points. I think Freddie Gaudreau could have gotten those points. I think Eric Sinek could have gotten those points. Marco Rossi is good, but I don't think he's the facilitator of that line. So you need to know when life is good and just sign a contract. If they're offering you a bridge deal of 3 years at $5 million per, yeah, you probably take it. You probably take that deal because it's not going to get better. You have a great opportunity here to advance your career. And instead of doing that, you're complaining because you want to be, I want to be assured I'm going to be on the first line. Nobody's assured of anything in this league. Nobody. So why don't you take the deal and move on and then earn it and do it in training camp and show that, okay, I'm a 1C. And if you're not a 1C, okay, then be a good second line center. Don't piss and moan because you drop down to the fourth line. Like, that's, I don't know. It screams Elias Pettersson to me, where you just have these, you just think you deserve things and you haven't earned them. We'll see how it pans out for him. I think he's super undersized. He's 5'9", 180 pounds. And typically when you see a 1C, they're men. Tim, they're big boys. When you look at the Florida Panthers, who they were rolling out in their top 3 centers, 6'2", 6'1", 210 pounds. Like, that's a man position, baby. And you're rolling in there at 5'9", 180, soaking wet, marbles in your pockets. Like, I just don't see it. I don't see it. So, yes, he's very confident. I like that. But let's just pump the brakes a little, Marco, because reality is going to hit you fast. If you think you're going to play hardball, next thing you know, you will be third-line center. And, Minnesota has all control. You're their property. You're an RFA. So we'll see how this plays out. Unless the team gives them an offer sheet, you're kind of stuck with the Minnesota Wild. I don't know. Do you like this play? Do you think it's okay for him to say, I don't want a bridge deal. I want, pay me like a first line center.
Well, so this is where we kind of get into like the reporting versus what he's actually saying, because we know that he rejected the trade, but it's the reporting that's saying he wants the top line minutes and that he's not happy with the fourth line minutes. So it's kind of like, what has he said versus what is his agent saying? How much of it is posturing? We know that the word is out that he's available, or that he could be available, because the Canucks offered the 15th overall pick in this draft plus a few other assets, and it wasn't enough to get the deal done. So I think most likely he'll return, because when you think about opportunity on a team that's headed for the playoffs, that needs that center, where you already know that you can produce and you're going to be playing with some talented players, I would think Minnesota is that spot for him. I don't know how many better spots they're going to get. And I think he's going to be a kid that just gets better every year. So maybe he can blossom into a point per game player. Maybe he's a 1C. He's going to have to work a little bit harder just because of his body size, like you said. But I don't know. I believe in this kid. I think he's going to be good for a few years to come.
No, he's a good player. I don't think he's a 1C. I think he slots into its 2C. But yeah, he's got talent. He's got vision. He's good. But I don't like this kind of posturing by him when he's only been in the league 2 years and he's really had a charmed first couple of years with who he gets to play with. Not quite similar, but the situations are a little similar with JJ Peterka, where the players are trying to strong arm their way out of the team or to a better deal. So we'll see how both of those situations end up. I think Peterka's much better than Rossi. So it's not too close, but boy, these young players got a little chutzpah. They got some spunk. They're not afraid to push back. In my day, contract gets slid in front of you. Go, holy crap, I'm taking it now. I'm not going to argue with the team. It's funny how times have changed, where the players, they have a little bit of more confidence, Tim. They know their worth, and they're not afraid to push to get what they want. All right. Speaking of a player who's kind of caught in between, Brock Besser, bandied about in trades for years and years and years. The Vancouver Canucks have been just dangling this guy, it seems like, at every trade deadline. Brock Besser's going to be moved. Brock Besser's going to be traded. Big-time goal scorer. Where's he going to go? Is he going to be re-signed? What are we going to do with Brock Besser? Well, he's gone, baby. He will sign with a new team this offseason. And if I'm a team, I want Brock Besser on my team. He is a proven goal scorer. He is one of those guys, and I know he hasn't put up a ton of goals, Tim, but he's just a solid, reliable goal scorer who you can put him in a spot and he can score. I don't think he's going to set the world on fire and all of a sudden get 50, 60 goals, but you can lock him in for 30. And you know he'll get that. He's a good first, second line power play guy. He's responsible on the ice, and teams want that. The question is, what's he worth? Because much like Marco Rossi, he was getting pretty good lineup combinations in Vancouver, playing with JT Miller and Elias Pettersson and all the talent that they had up front. So he's getting good chances. He's on a great power play. Who's vying for him? Let me guess. The Toronto Maple Leafs are vying for him. The Boston Bruins are vying for him. Every single player is linked to those guys. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, those are on the list. I think obviously the Canadians are there. The Minnesota Wild, this is the one that you said, you have been saying for months now that he's going to sign with. He's from there. I think that's a solid bet. Certainly Rossi's, where he goes is going to impact that. Besser's a great goal scorer, but something about him makes me nervous. If I'm a GM and I've only got a little bit of money to play with this season or this offseason, and I'm trying to add, I don't know that I want Besser. You're gonna have to sign him for 7 years, $7 million, maybe more, something like that. And for a guy that's going to take up that much cap space, I just want more out of a player who's kind of one-dimensional. When he's not scoring, he's not doing a whole lot, and he's going to be a frustrating player for long stretches of the season. And then he'll score 6 goals in 5 games and win you a couple, and that's great too. But it's just that hot and cold scoring winger who doesn't do a whole lot else is just not the horse that I want to hitch my cart to. It just makes me a little bit nervous. Not that, again, it's a very strong free agency class and you have a lot of options, but for the Bruins, for example, I wouldn't touch him. He's not my guy.
No kidding. He's a plug and play. He doesn't. I don't think he's going to garner that much of a raise. I think he was making 6.65 last year. He scored 40 goals 2 years ago. I think he's a solid goal scorer. I don't think he's that much of a liability, and I don't know. I don't think he's as streaky as you make him out to be. Maybe it's because I know him, and I'm partial to him, and I like him as a person, and he's super handsome. But I do think he's not a first-line guy. I think the expectations in Vancouver were a little bit too high for him there. I think he's a second-line scorer who maybe is on the first power play unit. That's his upside. I think if you can get him for $7-8 million with the salary cap going up, he's still relatively young. I think he's only, 28 years old. Sign him to a nice 4 or 5 year deal. I think that's a good range for him. So, I don't know. Teams, I think, should be clamoring for him. The Bruins would be lucky to have him, but I think he wants to go somewhere where he can win, and Boston's not that place. That's why I still think Minnesota is the perfect spot for him. I think he slides great with Kirill Kaprizov on that first line. You move Matt Zuccarello down. He's old. You have Matt Boldy. You have a lot of good scores on that team. It's just down the middle for Minnesota. Cheapers, creepers. They need to get some centermen on that team. But Brock Besser, there's other teams that are linked to him. You mentioned the Wild, the Canadians, the Kings, the Red Wings, the Mammoth. All of these teams want Brock Besser, and I think he will. Does he top 8 million? That's the question, because he hasn't really had that breakout season other than the 40 goals 2 years ago. If you take that season away, he's a 25 to 30 goal scorer. That was an aberration season 2 years ago when he gets that 40. What do you want to pay him if you're a GM? It's such a weird thing.
It's a hard number to guess because he's 28. He's in his prime. He's a UFA. He's, I think he's an easily, I don't know, he'll fit right in. He's kind of a plug and play, like you said. And the class is so weak that someone's going to overpay him, I think. And I don't know if you need you want a 30 goal scorer, you're a top 6 scoring winger short of where you want to be, and he's your only option. You might have to overpay to get him. That's the part that makes me nervous. So I don't know. I think he's probably 7x7 feels right to me, but someone's going to offer him more.
Yeah, I think he gets more than 7. I think he gets in the 8 range. But the great thing is for him, the salary cap's going up. So teams have money to spend, and teams are willing to pay. I'm not saying he's going there, but teams that are contenders, teams that need goal scoring. You look at a team like the Vegas Golden Knights. I know it's crazy to think that they need goal scoring, but he would look nice up front. They struggled to score in the playoffs this year, but who knows? I know the agent, Ben Hankinson. He'll do a good job by Brock Besser. But yeah, it's very thin. So the fact that he is one of the most coveted free agents this offseason, it's kind of strange. All right, the coveted free agent. We've been burying the lead for a while now. Mitch Marner. Where's he going, Tim? Where's Mitch Marner going?
Well, he's one of those names that is linked all across the league, right? You have a rebuilding team like Chicago who could use him to accelerate, their window. You have a team like Dallas and Carolina that's looking to add a top six forward, and they're going to have to finagle some cap space to do it. But the team right now that's supportedly in the lead, is the Vegas Golden Knights. Reportedly, they are the team to beat, and a lot of teams are waiting to see what the word is and what they're going to offer. Because I think it hits a lot of buttons that Marner wants, because it's a big market, a competitive team, but a smaller hockey market without that media attention, without that spotlight. And I think that he's going to go get a lot of money and immediately go chase a cup every year for the length of his contract. So I think this is obviously on July 1st. Whether or not he signs on that day is going to be, TBD. But this is the big domino. This is going to be the thing that impacts all other things, whether he signs first and then teams go to their second, third, and fourth options, or he waits a day or two to see all the offers and really think it over, and teams have to switch to their second and third option because they don't want to wait any longer. So this is kind of the thing that everything else we're talking about is really going to revolve around.
Yeah, and I don't know how they do this. They don't have the cap space to sign him. They already are carrying... They're already carrying Eichel, Stone, Hurdle, Carlson, Barbashev, Pietrangelo, Theodore, Hannafin. Like, they're carrying a lot of cap space. I think they only have $9 million to spend. So if they do this, they have to move some salary cap. But if I'm Marner, I don't know. If I'm Mitch Marner, I'm looking at situations where I can win. Yes, Vegas makes sense to me. But do I think they're in line to win a Stanley Cup in the next few years? I don't. I feel like Vegas is on the downward trend. I think their defense is old and slow. When you have Pietrangelo, who's 35, Theodore's 29, Hannafin's 28, McNabb is 34, Whitecloud's 28. That's an aging defense in an age where you need puck-moving, swift-footed defensemen. That's a very slow, plodding defense that got exposed this postseason. Their forwards have seen a lot of miles on them. Mark Stone always is hurt. Jack Eichel, obviously coming off of that surgery, he's been good. Thomas Hurdle in that lineup all the time. William Karlsson, 32. This isn't a young, exciting roster that when I look at it, I go, oh yeah, 8 years, this is going to be great. Maybe you get 1 or 2 years out of this roster, and then it gets old real quick, Tim. I don't know why he's so in love with this team, and he might not be. This is all just rumors and stuff. If I'm him, if I'm Mitch Marner, and I don't really care about taxes, because obviously that doesn't play a part when you're making $14 million. You're going to be rich wherever you go. Go to LA. Go to the Los Angeles Kings. Play with an Alex Turcotte. Milk Ansi Kopitar for a couple more years. You get Quentin Byfield. You get Adrian Kempe, who's 28. Kevin Fiala, very underrated star who's 28 years old. You have a good defensive forward in Philip Deneau. You have some good depth in Warren Fogle and Trevor Moore. I like the LA Kings. You put him on that team, and then they still have some money to spend. They have $21 million to spend. You get Mitch Marner, and you go out and you get some more high-end talent. The back end maybe needs some work. You got Drew Doughty, who's still really good at 35 years of age. That could use some work. But then you have Brant Clark coming in. You have some good young players. Jordan Spence, who's okay. But boy, I'm going to LA. I like the way that their team's set up. But I don't know, he's allowed to make his own decisions. But Vegas would not be my first, second, or third choice if I'm Mitch Marner. That's just how I see it.
Yeah, it could just be the report that they're willing to offer the most, maybe, or among the contending teams, because obviously he's going to go play somewhere where he can win. And I don't know that some of the, like the Dallas, for example, can offer him a ton of money. And I don't know what it is about the Hurricanes. So we'll see. We'll see where he goes. So let's keep moving down the list because we have a lot of players to cover. This one's a confusing one. I need someone to explain this to me. Noah Dobson's name has been thrown around a lot in the last couple of days. And there's a real chance that the Islanders trade him by all accounts, by all reports. Now, he's 25 years old. He's an RFA right now. He only had 39 points this year. I think the Islanders had a down year overall, obviously, but he had 70 last year. He was like a year and a half ago, we were talking about him on par with, the Quinn Hughes and McAvoys and Foxes of the world, and now he's suddenly a guy that they could try to trade. I don't really understand it. Do you think he's trying to ask for too much money and that's why his name's being thrown around, or what?
No, I think this is a case of them winning the lottery and their ability to draft Matthew Schaefer. So they're going to get that kid number 1 overall, and he's going to slot in to be their number 1 defenseman right away. That's why I think they're throwing around Noah Dobson, because there's no other reason for them to want to trade this guy. He's a terrific defenseman. And I think any team would be lucky to have him. But when you win the lottery and you get to draft this Matthew Schaefer kid, who's incredible, big body, swift skating defenseman who's just, all accounts is a generational talent. I know that word gets thrown around, but this kid's the real deal. So if I'm the New York Islanders, I go, okay, let's look at my roster. I have Ryan Pollock, I got Pellich, I got Mayfield. I'm going to bring back Romanov. I got potential all-star Tony DeLangelo. You have some good defensemen there already. Let's try to, shore up our forwards, because that's always been our issue. We don't have a lot of scoring up front. So let's trade our defensemen, get some offense up front, because we know we want to give this kid some ice time, and he's going to eat up 20 to 25 minutes, and maybe there's not enough ice time to go around. Is it the right option? I don't think so, personally. I think it would be great to have Noah Dobson on this team with Schaefer. Maybe try to move Ryan Pollock if I could, or Adam Pellich, or another one of these defensemen, but he's an RFA. You're going to pay him a boatload of money. You're going to have to pay this Schaefer kid a boatload of money. Maybe they want to invest in the forwards a little bit more. I don't know. So that's my reasoning. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Noah Dobson wants out, and we just don't know about it because the Islanders are a complete mess, Tim. When you look at this team and what they've done the last couple of years, they went to 3 straight Eastern Conference Finals, and they had so much potential. Matthew Barzal hasn't panned out. Bo Horvat hasn't really panned out since he came over from Vancouver. They got the vets and Anders Lee and Pajot. I know they got rid of Brock Nelson this offseason. They just re-upped Kyle Palmieri for some reason. I just don't understand what this team is all about. So, yeah, why not trade your best young defenseman? I don't know. It seems like you got to be 30 years or older to play on this team. So it's strange for me, but he should get a huge return. You would think. 25-year-old defenseman, massive slap shot, great puck mover, can play in all situations. Just like he checks every single box you would want, right? I don't. You would think you'd want to keep him for 8 years, but that's not what the Islanders seem to be doing.
Yeah, and I don't know that they're shopping him necessarily, but they are looking at options and they're exploring, the trade market for him. And I think that reasoning makes a lot of sense. So he's a name to keep an eye out on. And there's another team that we think is going to have a huge offseason, potentially, because they can't keep spinning their wheels here. It's the Buffalo Sabres. So they have a couple of key RFAs hitting the market potentially. Bowen Byram wants out. He wants to go play somewhere else. JJ Peterka's name keeps coming up over and over again. I even saw a report that the Sabres are looking at either a buyout or a trade of defenseman Matthias Samuelsson. So there's a lot of unanswered questions for the Sabres team, and I think it could be a big couple of weeks for them.
Yeah, Matthias Samuelsson signed a 7-year, $30 million contract in 2023 that runs through 2030, coming off his entry-level contract where he had 10 points in 55 games. Kind of a shutdown, stay-at-home defenseman. But boy, like it's one of those contracts, Tim, where you give it out for potential. We talk about these contracts all the time. This one's not panning out very well for the Buffalo Sabres. And we just mentioned Noah Dobson. Rumors have potentially him ties to Buffalo. They would love to have a right-shooted defenseman to kind of pair up with Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin. Those guys are anchoring down the left side. So you need someone to kind of balance out those two guys. And Noah Dobson would be great. You got Bowen Byram. Maybe where does he slide in? But I don't know. Samuelsson just doesn't seem to be panning out for this team. And especially when you invest that much money in those two aforementioned guys. Rasmus Dahlin's making, $9.5 million. Owen Power is going to be due to be making 8.3 this season. Dahlin's making 11. It's a lot of money to pay to your defenseman, especially when Matthias Samuelsson is a left shot defenseman. He's getting third pairing minutes. He's, there's not enough minutes to go around, so you maybe want to move him, buy him out. It seems drastic to buy him out. I try to trade him, but yeah, the Buffalo Sabres need to do something for Pete's sake. They just would. You bring in Joshua Norris. Terrible trade. Tage Thompson had a down year. Jason Zuck. I'm just going down the list. There's not a lot to be excited for if I'm in Buffalo right now. They have some good young talent that they could parlay into great players. Kevin Adams, again, much like Kevin Cheveldayoff, much like a lot of GMs around the league, how long is his leash in Buffalo? Because he's had a few years now, and he has some good players, Tim. Like, there are some very good players in the pipeline that could make Buffalo a good team. But what does he do with them? Do you trade them? Do you like a Helenus or an Ostland? Like, there's some good young players coming up. What happens at Buffalo? I don't know, but it's a huge offseason for them, like you said, because they have to start progressing. You can't just keep losing players to this losing environment. And JJ Paterka apparently wants out. All these players just leave and go win Stanley Cups. So poor Buffalo. Like I really do. I want them to do well, but they just can't seem to figure it out. All right, who else isn't returning this offseason, Tim? To a
Yeah,
team?
we rattle through a couple of quick ones here. Tanner Jeannot is not going to be back in LA, so he's going to hit the open market. I think he's an attractive player. Second, third line guy. Some grit to his game, some sandpaper. I think a lot of contending teams would love to add him. The Sam Bennett extension is quote unquote as good as done with the Panthers. I think the gain's all going to come back, except for Aaron Ekblad. I think teams are going to be lining up for him if he does hit the market. But if he stays in Florida, it changes everything because he's going to be probably the number one defenseman on the market. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. And then we get to our old buddy, Erik Karlsson. According to a report from the fourth period, he will be willing to waive his no move for a contending team. He's currently being actively shopped by the Penguins, who may be willing to retain some of his $10 million salary cap hit. If you're a GM and you can get him on your roster for 5 or 6, is that worth it, or are you still staying away from him?
Oh, Kyle Dubas. It's very funny. So Erik Karlsson is 35 years old. Potentially, if Pittsburgh does trade him, like you said, they would retain 50%, which is $5 million. No, I don't touch this guy. For the amount of offensive upside that he has, his defensive deficiencies, I should say, are so large that I'm not touching this guy at all. Like especially if you're a contending team. What happens in the playoffs? Teams lock it down, right? You're facing the best of the best. So if I'm a team, just say for instance the Dallas Stars or the Carolina Hurricanes, and I'm going to go up against Nathan McKinnon, or I'm going to go up against Matthew Tkachuk and Barkov, do you think you're going to be able to play Erik Karlsson in those minutes? No, you're hiding him. You're trying to protect him. You're keeping him away from those high-end guys. Yeah, he's a very good power play specialist, so maybe you hide him on the third pairing. But I just don't see a world where he is on a good Stanley Cup contending team. Look at the teams that win the Stanley Cup. Seth Jones, multi-dimensional player. Aaron Ekblad, multi-dimensional player. You can play in power play, penalty kill. The shutdown defenseman, Mikkola, Forsling, shutdown defenseman who can move the puck pretty well. What does Erik Karlsson do really, really good? He moves the puck. That's it.
I think there's a lot of brand name stuff there. He's had an outstanding career. He still is, he's incredibly talented. He was much better, obviously younger. At this point, if his name wasn't Erik Karlsson, you were looking just at what he offered right now. He's getting like Shane Gostisbehere money. You know what I mean? Like he's a good Eric Gustis, like just a guy that you can rely on in the power play and put up a few points and not ask too much. But the Erik Karlsson name still has a lot of value, and I think people are still hoping that he can be that number one defenseman in the right situation. And you're only going to be disappointed if you expect anything close to that.
Again, if he came with the $2 million salary cap hit, I'd be all over it. But I think and that's with Pittsburgh eating 5, which I don't think they will. But yeah, it's too much to pay for a guy who just has so much baggage and just doesn't bring much to the table. So what did Dubas pay to get him? I can't remember what the trade was, but I remember when Mike Greer was shopping him, it was like, oh, well, I was saying teams would have to pay San Jose to get him. And Kyle Dubas I have it right here. He acquired Erik Karlsson for Mikael Granlund, Mike Hoffman, Jan Ruda, and a first rounder. And Mikael Granlund, you don't remember, they flipped him for a first rounder to Dallas. So, like, holy hell, Kyle Dubas. What a terrible trade. How am I not a GM in this league? I don't understand, because it's so obvious to me that these things aren't going to work out. But Kyle Dubas, in his great knowledge of everything hockey, looks at his lineup, and we need Erik Karlsson. You already have Chris Letang, idiot. And you go and you get Erik Karlsson, and you give up Mikael Granlund, who was fantastic in the playoffs, by the way. Absolutely fantastic for the Dallas Stars. You give up your first rounder, which was a 14th overall pick, by the way. And the Buffalo Sabres picked Helenus, who's going to be a great forward for them. You give up Hoffman, who sucks, and you give up another guy who stinks, Jan Ruda. But holy hell. And then you acquire his whole contract. You don't make San Jose eat any of it. Mike Greer should win GM of the year every single year for that trade, and Kyle Dubas should be cast off into purgatory because it's a terrible move, terrible trade. Oh my gosh, I don't know why
you could
people
be
aren't
like
talking
a freelance GM advisor when they call you up. Hey Johnny, I got a trade on the block here. I'm going to give up Granlund and a first, and these other guys, Ping and Eric Carlson. You just don't do it. Hang up. That's all you had to do.
Just give me $500,000 for that. Like, oh my gosh, it's crazy that teams make these moves. I don't know how GMs do these things. I know. Drop me a comment if I'm crazy, but it just seems like bonkers. All right, one last thing. Evan Bouchard. He has told the Oilers that his asking price for 8 years is $10 million. If I'm the Oilers, I'm signing him to $10 million for 8 years right now. If that's what he's asking, you're doing it. Right, Tim? I don't know why they're even waiting.
Yeah, you have to. He's got obviously some flaws in his game, but guys that can skate like him, they can pass like him, that you can rely on for most situations, don't come on, the market all the time. He's your guy for better or worse. You have to sign him. He got exposed a bit in the playoffs, and I think a lot of that had to do with Ekholm not being 100%, because when he's playing well, it kind of covers up for a lot of Bouchard. And Bouchard was asked to do a little bit more because Ekholm wasn't healthy, and you get what you got. So I feel like he's still the guy. You can rely on him, and your focus now is for the next 10 years, 8 years, is getting guys to play with Bouchard and building defense around him because he's talented enough to do that.
Yeah, the Edmonton Oilers, if you go and look at their cap situation and their roster over the next year or two, I don't know what's going to happen with this roster. It's so up in the air. They have so many UFAs. They have so many guys to sign. I just don't know. The only two guys that they have locked up longer than a few years are Draisaitl and Nurse. And I guess the Nuge. It's such a bizarre roster for a team that's gone to the Stanley Cup Finals for the last 2 years. They have nothing wrapped up, nothing long term. When you go and look at a team like Colorado or Dallas or Florida, they have that assurance. They have that stuff to look forward to, whereas the Edmonton Oilers, and we didn't even touch on Connor McDavid.
Right.
We're gonna save that for a future show. His comments are shocking. Not something you want to hear from the best player on the planet who you want to desperately sign. If I'm Draisaitl, I'm going, oh no, not good, no bueno. All right, we have overstayed our welcome. It's already been 52 minutes and we haven't even gone through the agenda. I apologize. We'll talk to you guys Thursday again, potentially. Check us out on Bleacher Report. We're going to be doing a draft stream on the 27th at 7 p.m. to go through the whole NHL draft. That'll be fun. I'm going to have some beers. Tim's going to have some Kool-Aid. We're going to have a lot of fun there. But yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. We will talk to you again later. Cheers.